Well, welcome. My name is Joel Boone. I'm with John Fraioli, and we're pastors in our local church here, Big Valley Grace Community Church in Modesto, California. And we're here to acknowledge and address the Supreme Court decision from Friday, June 24th, 2022, regarding abortion. And so, John, I want to start us off in this way as we really have a discussion about how should we, as Christians, interact with this decision, but how should we be thinking biblically for Christ in this moment, engaging in our culture. So I'm going to read to you the first half of what is really a core statement from the syllabus of the Supreme Court, and it says this: the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. Roe and Casey are overruled. From your life, interact really from a historical standpoint with that statement.
Okay. Well, it still is amazing to hear those words officially for me. When the Roe decision was made in 1973, I was still in high school. Wasn't a Christian. I was raised in the Catholic Church and, didn't give it much thought. And through high school and junior college and into college, it really didn't affect me very much. So never really gave it any thoughts. Of course, I remember hearing things in various classes that I had about abortion and the right of a woman to choose and things like that. But it wasn't until about 40 years ago when I became a believer, when I surrendered my life to Christ, that I had the opportunity to hear the truth. And between different sermons that I would hear, we always had a Sanctity of Life Sunday, and I'd hear sermons about abortion and the truth of abortion. And slowly the Lord began to birth a realization in my heart and mind of the truth of abortion and the evil that it is and just what is really happening. In fact, it became so real to me in terms of this is so wrong, and it was something in my heart I knew I just had to do something. It was kind of the cause that became important to me, and I remember in the mid '80s being led, if you will, to being part of a small group of people that would stand outside the abortion clinic on Coffee Road. Back then, you could get to the back parking lot, and as people came in, you could pray for them. You could hand them materials and things like that, and it was still things like that were still allowed. There were pastors in this city who would go there in silent protest and try to block the doors, and were arrested back in the Operation Rescue days in the '80s. We had pro-life rally and marches in January in downtown Modesto, and I was always a part of that. And so, I just felt that I just needed to have a voice in this issue because it was just so wrong to me, and I thought this is not good for. It's obviously not good for the babies who are losing their lives. It's not good for our country that we would have such a thing in our law, and it's not good for us as the church to just ignore the issue or to not participate. So that was kind of the background, and it took the Lord really to put that on my heart. And I remember working in those things with people who were not believers, but realized what the truth was.
You know, as you're sharing, you're reminding me of a passage that's been really significant for my wife and I, and that is from James chapter 1, verse 27. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their affliction and to keep oneself unstained from the world. And while in this case, it's not necessarily an orphan, but it is a child that is in great affliction. And you really having the sense to show up and to speak up. And I know that this has been significant for my wife's and my life as well. Share more about, just from your story, about how the issue of abortion, has impacted you. You've been a pastor for many years, and how has in your life this issue really impacted you?
Well, it's been something that, these things are always in the background, and that something this significant just grieves the heart of God. And I've seen our church get involved in ministries that try to do something about it, even though we couldn't do anything about the law. We couldn't change the law other than to vote for people that would have a heart for this, and to promote voting for people around this issue, because it is in my mind, was the number one issue in any political arena. And if someone did not have the right perspective on this, they just never deserved my vote. But I saw our church getting involved in various ways, and we continue to be involved with Oliviana's Closet and supporting Modesto Pregnancy Center and other opportunities that we've been given. But it's always been, one of those things that, I was involved relatively early in my Christian life. Before I was on staff here, I was involved in different things, but it's such a long-term commitment that it was hard to stay active. And I didn't stay very active for very long, or after a while. So it's something that you have to just completely rely on the Holy Spirit to give you the strength to deal with these things.
Psalm 139 very clearly talks about life in the womb and uses terms like knitted together. And it reminds me of Ephesians, where Ephesians 2:10 says we are his workmanship, his craftsmanship. And what an encouragement to know that God has been intimately involved in creating us. We've been created in his image. We're his workmanship. We're his craftsmanship. I want to read to you the second half of this core statement and get your feedback on it. It says, and the authority to regulate abortion is returned to the people and their elected representatives. And that's really from the core decision from Friday, June 24th. So speak about the significance now of this decision on Friday.
Yes, everything I had heard over the years about the original decisions, legally, yes, it is a issue that should be decided on a different level than the Supreme Court, than the judges who made those original decisions. And it was, I've always been convinced that the original Roe decision was totally bogus. And so when they came out and made the declaration, which is true, that this is a decision that should be left to the states, I think it makes it that it's left to the people, because at that level, the people can have a voice in it. And I know that it's going to be different in different states, and there's all the political issues regarding that. But what is true is the change in our prayer focus now. Our prayer should be for God to open the hearts and the minds of the people, the various states, to elect and support the right people who will make these decisions in the different states. Now, as I mentioned earlier, who would have thought? I had no idea that we would have seen this in my lifetime. And many times I thought this is a lost cause, and yet God made this happen. However, He put things together so that this decision would come out this way. It's obviously a work of His hand. And so I live in California. I look at our government and think, is there any way? But, it's like there's a new life in the issue of, God can do anything. I believe that God brought this about perhaps as, well, not perhaps, but as a mercy for our country, that something so heinous, so awful, there were issues less than this that brought other countries down over the centuries, but it's like He's giving the people of the United States a chance to wake up to some other things that need to change for us to turn back to Him. So I have hope. I have obviously the fact that there are already states that have implemented restrictions. That means that there are babies who will be alive who would not otherwise have been. There will be mothers who will not have to go through the pain and the sorrow of having gone through an abortion. Maybe they were prevented from it. Maybe because it's more difficult, they change their mind and look for other options, but it preserves them from the harm. That we also need to be praying for the women who have made the other choice, and they need to be lifted up as well. But there's more hope in praying for our government, even in California, even in New York, that things can be different.
Well, is there anything else that you would want to give as an encouragement to the church, to followers of Christ, just moving forward? Friday was a huge day with the Supreme Court decision, and what encouragement do you have for us as we continue on?
Okay. As part of my story, I grew weary in this issue. And so the encouragement I would have, I think, is not only in this issue, but in other things, is God gives you strength, and it really is true to not grow weary in well-doing, because He will come through. And the fact that God is sovereign over all the affairs of men, that you can see it in this decision, that He would so change our government and orchestrate things in such a way that something like this can happen. And if He can do that in something so big, the issues in our lives that He is sovereign over, He is certainly well able to take care of those things for us. It's really where our focus is. And if our focus is on Him and putting Him first, we can see the same type of power in any of the difficulties that we would experience, or the seemingly impossible obstacles that we see in front of us. So not to grow weary in well-doing, and to continue to pray for a change in this country, because this is where God has put us, and he calls us to pray for those in authority, and we need to continue to do that.
Absolutely. Well, Pastor John, I thank you for taking an opportunity to share with us from your own life and your own history regarding this issue. Thank you for joining us. And I want to close by just reading 2 lines from the beginning of the prayer that Jesus taught the disciples. And it's, "Pray then like this: Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven." Thanks for joining us for this time.
All right. Thank you, Pastor Joel.